I'm delighted to say that I'm now being joined by Rupa Huq. Welcome to the show, Rupa.
Hi, Ed.
Now, Rupa has been the Labour MP for Ealing Central and Acton since 2015. In fact, she defeated my friend Angie Bray to win that seat. Angie Bray, funny enough, is now in the House of Lords. Don't tell Nadine Dorries. I have to say...
There is life after death, isn't there?
There is life after death. Rupa does seem very popular. I read when I was doing my research that the Greens decided they wouldn't fight you because they felt you were very sound on environmental issues, and Vince Cable said after chatting to you that he was going to tell the Lib Dems to support you. And if that wasn't enough cross-party action, last week Rupa invited me to open a banking hub in her constituency. So welcome again to the show. What is it that do you think that makes you so popular with members of other parties? Is that good for your career?
Well, look, I just think people are people. I was a non-politician for a lot longer than I was a politician. So, and also I have to be nice to everyone to keep my marginal seat. So, yeah.
You've made it a lot less marginal now. I think you've got a 13,000 majority, having had just a majority of, what, 30 or 40 when you first won the seat?
It was 274, I'll have you know, once upon a time. It went to 13.8 at one point, which, I don't know, my rounding, that's kind of nearer to 14,000 than 13,000. But anyway, it's 13-something at the moment.
One of the good things about opening this banking hub with you, apart from making me feel important once again, was it is a good reminder that amid all the psychodrama of Westminster, constituency MPs get on with the job, because a lot of the speeches were praising you for working hard over the last year, 2 years, to make sure this banking hub happened in Acton. Tell us what a banking hub is.
So, yeah, this is a totally new concept, and it's for places where the last bank in town has exited, and there's no sort of facilities to do those banking-type transactions. So because there's not enough footfall to justify separate branches, all the banks have clubbed together in the one building. It looks like a bank, smells like a bank, but you can sort of do your banking stuff for 20 different banks in the one place, and also 5 days a week, the big guys. So I think yesterday it was NatWest, but they take it in turns if you want to have a mortgage or a loan or something a bit more specific. So there's a person on hand 5 days a week, but whatever the day, you can do basic deposits and withdrawals for pretty much any bank in there.
It's the kind of thing you expect to be opening in a sort of rural area where the banks have abandoned a small market town, for example. It's quite weird to think of it in effectively kind of a densely populated central London area. Why is it needed in Acton?
So Acton, sadly, has seen the last of its banks. Barclays was the last one to up sticks. Oh, no, sorry, hang on. Who was it? Santander. Anyway, it's not a nice competition to be in, the last bank. So it's the first one in an urban area, you're right, and it's the first one in London. But there's been 5 elsewhere in sort of rural, sorry, I won't say the word backwater, it's a bit pejorative, but in rural locations, there have been 5 others to date.
So I had 3 of the London mayoral candidates for the Tory nomination on my show. Only one of them, Dan Korski, has made it into the last 3. Paul Scully, the London minister, actually didn't make it onto the shortlist, nor did Sam Kusamu. But all 3, but people, the Tory candidate is going to be selected very soon. I mean, obviously you're party pre, but what do you think are going to be the issues in the London mayoral election as a London MP?
I mean, a lot of these issues are pretty universal. The cost of living crisis, the word crisis is much overused, but I mean, people's energy bills, people's mortgages, thanks to your friend Liz Truss and mine. So all those kind of things, I think it's who gets it, but also we have a climate emergency, and that's an existential problem. I think that will feature. Yeah, it's going to be a year. When is it? Hang on, May. Yes, because we're a little bit out of sync because of COVID.
It's going to be May next year, just to say you know when to start campaigning. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think London is a Labour city, but I do think that Sadiq Khan is vulnerable over things like the ULEZ extension. This is the pollution tax that he puts on older cars, and also cycle lanes. Is that issue controversial in your constituency?
Actually, ULEZ, I would think not so much. I unusually have a seat that's within and outside the A406, so I straddle both sides of it.
Exactly.
So the initial thing was just within the sort of ring road thing for more inner London. 9 out of 10 cars are compliant, so it hasn't really been an issue. I think there was one person who came and saw me in my surgery, which I've just done tonight, actually, my Friday surgery, who was a diesel van driver. So I think those people, and again, diesel was once sold as a panacea. It was meant to be a good thing at one point. There's a bit of an issue, but there's been a load of scrappage concessions announced. So yeah, I think most people are okay with it.
And how are you feeling after a week of the Boris psychodrama? Is it all that Labour MPs talk about in the tea room? Are you all absolutely delighted with the Tories tearing themselves apart? Do you think that Keir Starmer is going to coast to the next election, or do you think he has more work to do?
I mean, look, the trajectory is good. It's all going in the right direction, but we're never complacent. I've never been complacent with a majority of 274. In my head, it will always be 274. So, polls are great, but the only poll that matters is the actual election result on the day. But the trajectory looks good, and they do seem to be self-destructing. Ed, your party, what is it doing to itself?
It's very odd. There's nothing we like
don't
better
have to do a lot at the moment.
Talking about ourselves. Now, I normally wouldn't do this, but it helps me bring in tomorrow's Times. Your sister is Connie Huq, and she's married to Charlie Brooker. And if you turn onto the first page of the Saturday Review, there's an absolutely amazingly positive, brilliant review from Hugo Rifkind about the new series of Black Mirror on Netflix. And I was reflecting that Hugo Rifkind, as the son of a Tory cabinet minister, is bigging up the brother-in-law of a Labour MP. Do you get involved with Black Mirror? Do you get to see the previews? Do you discuss it over dinner with your in-law?
Actually, I had a thank you credit on a very early Black Mirror when it was on Channel 4. There was an episode called, I can't even remember what it's called. It was about a character that was a bit like Mr. Blobby that won an election by mistake.
Right.
And I was telling him what a selection meeting is like. It's before I was an MP.
Right. Because you had stood in places like Chesham and Amersham, so you knew a bit about it.
Yeah, it must have been post-Chesham and Amersham. It might have been when Labour was in government even. It might have been that long ago. But it said, with special thanks to Rupa Huq at the end, because I described what it was like to be, I mean, you've been through these before, but at a meeting, this X Factor type meeting where they're interviewing you to be the candidate.
Well, that does not appear on your Wikipedia page, and I suspect it doesn't appear on your official website. So at last, I have a world exclusive that Rupa Huq, Labour MP for Ealing Central and Acton, has a credit in a Black Mirror. I actually have a credit in a Star Wars film, which I managed to wangle as part of the film when I was the film minister. Rupa Huq, thank you so much for coming on after your surgery and reminding us that MPs do work hard, despite the fact that the only thing in the newspapers is the current psychodrama in Westminster. This is Ed Vaizey on Times Radio.